I would just like to mention that it was originally my intention. I'm very well aware that to listen to the same person again and again and again and again is a little bit trying on many aspects of our personality and our being. Actually, I very much wanted for this session, or for one of the sessions, an individual who is a veteran lecturer for Arachim. Arachim is probably the premier kiruv organization in the world. Must have a cheshbon of, who knows, well over 200,000 Baalei Tshuva over the years. They're in existence, well, I think over 40 years by now. And they really developed a very simple, but very, very basic and effective formula for kiruv. And the truth of the matter is, the subtlety of that presentation would be that a Rebbe in the classroom does have to view himself as a Makarev as well. Because today we have a phenomenon where there are so many people that are frum, religiously observant, but yet need a lot of kiruv. They used to call it in the olden days kiruv halavovos. I think that was very significant terminology. That it could be that even though we're koroiv today in our actions, we may not be koroiv in our hearts, with the passion, with the feeling. Mesillas Yesharim learns pshat in what it says, "V'atorah Yisrael mo Hashem Elokecha shoyel mimcho, la'avos Hashem, liyiras Hashem, la'av aleches b'chol dorochov, la'avides Hashem b'chol lavo b'chol nafshecho, and v'lishmor kol mitzvosav." And where he says, what he explains, what each one, la'avides Hashem b'chol lavo b'chol nafshecho, he says that refers to shleimus halev. The real avodah is in the heart. It isn't just that tefillah is avodah shebalev. In fact, the other drosha that Chazal learn out from Vavadatem Esaroikeichem is all the mitzvahs have to be b'chol levavchem and b'chol nafshechem. And that's something that's today a little shvach, and therefore I think we're all, in one way or another, involved in kiruv. When it comes to kiruv, this Arachim movement, I would call it, they're masters. In a long weekend, 4-day seminar. Now already we maybe cut it down to 3 days for various practical reasons. They can turn people's lives around. And people who come in completely secular, very doubtful, maybe convinced otherwise, turn around, and extremely, extremely powerful. And this individual is a veteran lecturer, but it couldn't work out on Tuesday nights that he could make. Originally I had agreed with him that he would come. So I have a little bit of background in that, maybe more than a little, and I'm going to try to present a bit of that material. But first I want to tell you a story of the power of this material. I can tell you many stories. I'll tell you one story. This story is about a Jew by the name of Larry. He was a retired college professor living in the Los Angeles area, and he came to one of the seminars that we did maybe 25 years ago, something like that. And Larry was the spokesman for all of the antagonists that existed in the audience. That was full of them, because that's what it was. It was a non-religious secular audience. And every time the speaker would make a point, the Olam would turn to Larry. Larry, what do you have to say about that? And Larry was well-read, and he had a comment on everything. Today, by the way, you don't have to be well-read. All you need to have is a smartphone, But in those days, they had to be well-read, and Larry knew it all. Friday night, the seminar, I believe, started on Wednesday. Friday night, one of the Choshev Balabatim from Los Angeles, a well-known name, if I mention, you've all heard the name, comes over to me with a little bit of a sarcastic tone. It says, "No, you think you'll have a couple of Baalei Tshuvas from this seminar?" So I said to him, 50% I'll guarantee you right now. And the numbers were greater than that. usually at a seminar. That means Baal Tshuva, meaning they finish, they want to be religious, and now they just need follow-up to be educated and to find out what it's all about. But they've committed, they believe in Torah Sinai, and so forth. Anyway, so this guy says, well, what about Larry? So I said to him, Larry will become a Baal Tshuva. And his comment was, I'll never forget it, if Larry becomes a Baal Tshuva, I'll eat my hat. Okay, fine. Sunday night, the seminar started, I think, Wednesday night. Sunday night was the end, was a symposium. Symposium is where the participants get up and they say how this seminar impacted their lives. And finally becomes Larry's turn. And the Olam was still. Larry's going to speak. The moment we've been waiting for. Larry gets up and he says, I spent my whole life searching for truth. I didn't believe it existed. He says, and it seems his second wife's daughter had become a Balas Tshuva from a seminar a year ago, and he says, Sherry kept on telling us, we have to come, we have to come, we have to come. And I wasn't interested, I wasn't involved, but she didn't let up. Finally, so I said to myself, maybe they have something under those black hats after all. Who knows? I came to the seminar. You know that I fought the speakers on every single point. And I am convinced that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Sinai 3,300 years ago. And I have already enrolled in Or Sameach in Israel. 65-year-old man, or whatever he was, I don't know. You know, the Olam was mamish. They didn't know what to do with themselves. Comes over this balabas to me. A little bit the head down, a little bit more humble than he was, when he spoke to me on Friday. And I says, can I eat my straw hat? Anyway, but this stuff is really powerful. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the principles involved. And the principle, really, we recite this principle every day. And in one way or another, not sure if it exactly goes on Dafka this, but it's part of it, Chazal tells us, the Gemara in Brochus tells us that there's a Chiyuv D'Oraisa. Emes v'yatziv D'Oraisa, the Gemara says. What's Emes v'yatziv? I finished being Makabel the Malchus Shamayim. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, V'havtas Hashem Elokecho, the full Kabbalah of Malchus Shamayim, Kabbalah of Mitzvahs, then Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim in the parish of Tzitzis. Mamish, like, that's it, A person who's Chored L'Dvar Hashem, he's ready to go. He was Makabel upon himself the Malchus Shamayim. And after that, he has to recite the following mantra. It's true and it's good. And that's really the case. And I emphasize this again, because as a mechanech, we have to be constantly, we see from here, we have to strengthen ourselves. With all due respect, yes, I have to remind myself that it's emes, v'yatzi, v'nochem, v'kayim, v'yosher, and it's nechmod, v'obu, v'chovim, v'noim, u'msukon, u'mukubal. I must constantly refocus on that. And I think that a very simple lesson is to think that this has to be a significant goal in our chinuch. And the problem with this goal in our chinuch is that it needs constant refreshing. And the more information that I have from different perspectives, the stronger that appreciation, that understanding, that belief, that knowledge is embedded within me. And that's really very important, because although repetition is very important and very beneficial, but sometimes repetition becomes like we forget, we don't pay attention anymore because I know it by rote. But when it's a different, I have this, I have that, I have the other thing, I see this thing and that thing, and constant different, and every time there's another example, it does wonders. And therefore I think it's so important for us to keep this in mind. I mentioned I think each time that we're here, this particular volume, which I think hopefully most of you people have gotten, but it's not the volume that impresses me. It's the idea. Find excuses. Any piece of information that you can find that could be mechazik, that sense of amitius haTorah, super powerful. super powerful. A different one, on an ongoing basis, another one, it becomes taken for granted. It isn't even a thought anymore. It's part of my psyche. It's part of my subconscious. It's my reality. And that has to be a goal. And the same thing with the good, with the benefits, with the happiness that comes from mitzvahs. That must constantly, any opportunity that we have to show that a life of Torah and mitzvahs, that observance of the mitzvahs, that learning is something that will benefit me, and I've mentioned many times in this world, is extremely powerful, and it constantly needs to be repeated. So there's two aspects to this. There's many aspects, but there's two very significant parts to this truth part. There's the benefits, which we spoke a little about Taimei HaMitzvahs, and again, the more that you can present a benefit in the here and now from any mitzvah that we do, you have added to that sense of clarity, of truth, and of readiness, willingness, and desire to see that truth, because I know it's going to be beneficial. And I've mentioned this before, I'm sure, but it's worthy to mention again. And that is that if I don't know that it's going to be good for me, I don't want to see the truth. I don't want to believe anything that's not going to be good for me. And if I do know it's going to be good for me, then I'm ready to accept the truth. But if I only know it's going to be good for me, and I don't know it's true, that's very nice. This is making me happy. But after a couple of years of happiness in one direction, I start to think, or maybe a couple of weeks or months, I don't know, say, hey, maybe there's something out there that'll make me more happy. But if I have both, it's true and it's beneficial, it's going to make me happy, it's making me happy, and this is true, Torah emes, Torah misinai, that's super powerful. And then when the Yetzer Hara, and then when the Nisyonis, and then when the challenges, and then when the negative influences of friends, and then when the internet, and then when all the depravity of the society in which we live, even if we live in communities that are relatively sheltered, and it's only relatively, and I'm not even sure how relatively it really is sheltered, I don't think anybody really knows, then the more that this is strong, the more that this is real, I'm ready. I can, of course, I don't want to think anything else. I don't want to hear anything else. I don't want to know anything else. And even if I'm tempted, but I have such a strong base of what's right and what's ultimately good for me. And I think I may have mentioned this. I told you I have that problem with forgetting what I mentioned. But I believe that the vast majority of kids that go off the derech want to come back. Yes, of course I want to marry a frum girl. Of course I want to marry a yeshiva bacher. Of course. But I just want a little freedom now. But if they don't really know what it is, and if they aren't really convinced that it's going to be good for them, then as they drift, and as they see other things, and as they think other things are making them a little temporarily happy, we're not mavcha between temporary and long-term. B'shas the temporary happiness, we forget about everything else. So, these two concepts are very important. Now, in the truth, the Amitiyas HaTorah, there are two issues. One is that there was a public revelation, which we discussed, and the other one was that there was an accurate Mesorah from generation to generation. Now, that is critical. And let me just, I have to unburden a little bit to you. On the way here, I had a phone call from an out-of-town community where there's one individual there, one Mesifta, that wants to do some type of a seminar to strengthen, these basic ideas in their students. And this Menahel approached some of the other Moistus in town, and they, no, it's pas nicht. We don't have any problems. We can't even think in that way. We can't imagine that our Talmidim are going to have questions. What do you mean, going to have questions? What have you been drinking? What are you smoking? Where is your mind? They're not going to have questions. They have questions. And you don't know the answers. And it's so sad. It got me so upset that, no, we can't. We wouldn't be mishtatif in such a thing. And knowing full well that this Menayel is too timid to give over the message that I gave him. I said, please tell them that they will not be able to say Yodenu lo yishovcho es Adam hazeh when some of their kids, which Rahmon al is inevitable, will be drifting far, far away, and they could have prevented it had they been a little more realistic as to what's going on. And when I say this, and I know that the group here is diverse, and I say this really has to start in the younger grades. Because if in the younger grades there's less resistance. They don't have the same Yetzer Hara, certainly not the same Yetzer Hara for the things that the older kids have. And B'chlal, they're a little bit more manageable. Well, young, that means 2-year-olds, but anyway. But today it's a little difficult. I have to constantly update myself too, because in every generation, now we have 5-year-old teenagers too. But Maisa, if we get these ideas in, it becomes part of them. It's like it sticks for life. This the Girsa de Yankisa, the sooner it gets in, it's there to stay. And it can make a difference 10 years later in their lives because it was positive, it was a positive experience, it was a happiness experience, it was a beneficial experience, and it's clear as day that this is the only reality that exists in the world. Torah Sinai and the Beirei Olam, forgive my irreverence, are the only show in town. And not just in this town, in any town. In the universe. There's nothing else. Ein Oid Milvado is the ultimate reality. And Torah Sinai is the only purpose of creation. And the only truth that exists in creation. And the world is so decadent because they don't have a Torah Sinai. Nebuch, they tried, they translated the Torah Shebichsav, but they really don't know what it means. And since they don't know what it means, their lives are hefka, their world is hefka. The riches that goes on in the world is ain't the shire because there's no authority, there's no guidance, there's no rules, there's no divine rules. They don't know what they are, even if they admit that there are such a thing. And just to think that the founding fathers would like us to act accordingly really doesn't impress anybody today. So this is very, very critical. Now, let's talk for a moment. So we spoke a little bit. I think, no, maybe we should do that first. Let's talk about more. We spoke about two categories. Evidence. Now, and I did point out, don't be apologetic and don't make big lectures like I'm doing. Just one thing, another thing, another thing, another thing after a while. Now, I'd like to, at this point, just show a couple more of these videos just to give you a sense of what we can do. For example, one of the things that is very, very powerful is when we talk about the Kaisel Maravi, that the Kaisel Maravi will not be destroyed. Kaisel Maravi is the place of the Hashoras HaShechina. I know from one story that I'd like to share with you, and maybe I did, about the Shidduch, Kaisel, no, okay. And then something else that someone told me took place. Kaisel is a very holy place. They say it was a guy who pulls up on his stretch limousine on Shabbos morning, runs up, puts something in the Kaisel, and somebody knocked it out. He's being mispalled for the Haifa team to beat the Tel Aviv soccer team. Everybody knows that this is the place. I had the Maisa where it was Erev Pesach. I was a bocher in Eretz Yisrael learning, and I was on a bus in Meir Shorim, and I see a little old lady with a sack of potatoes that was bigger than her. She's schlepping the sack of potatoes off the bus. So I help her with it, and I realize I have to take it to her apartment, her house, whatever. She says, I have nothing to give you, but she wants to tell me a story. She asked me if I know Binyamin Tzadik, that's Binyamin Zilber, Zechrenu Levrocha, and so I did. And she says, well, he came to me once, also Bochar, and he said, the Chazon Ish sent me to you and said, you have my shidduch, my basherta. She didn't have any children, what am I going to do? No, she ran to the Kaisel, this was before 48, and she's standing crying. Another lady next to her, she notices, is crying. She says, what are you crying about? Oh, I have such a daughter, such a wonderful daughter. But kids, that was the shidduch. The Kaisel is a holy place. But that Chazal, what Chazal tell us about the Koisel, is mind-boggling to people. But I do want to share with you a negative experience. Once in a group like this, I don't want to say a group like this, in a group of Machanchim, I mentioned this, we didn't have a beautiful video, but just the idea of the Koisel Ma'arovi. And so one of the participants asked me, what are you going to do if the Koisel will be destroyed? So I said, what are you laughing? Anyway, so I said, sorry, it ain't gonna happen, you know. He said something terrible. He says, but that's only Chazal. I says, I beg your pardon. I looked at him as if he was coming from the moon. That's only Chazal. Well, the truth of the matter is that the fact that it's not only the psukim, that it's Chazal, adds to the pele of this Koisel. That Chazal were not hesitant to make such a statement, that in itself is a very strong thing. And the best thing is, don't speak about it, like I'm trying not to and can't resist. If you want, you show a video, and let the video talk. And we mentioned last time, I think, that it wasn't l'chatchila designed that way, I don't think. I think it was to save money. But l'maisa, when you hear this Goyish speaker speaking there, you know, it's even more credible. Because he certainly doesn't have an agenda to be makar of us. He certainly couldn't care less if we're ma'aminim or not ma'aminim. Let's try this one now, please.
Standing at 488 meters long and 60 meters high, the Western Wall is a massive and grand edifice. Our last remaining structure on the Temple Mount from the era of the Second Temple, the Western Wall has become a symbol of our hope for the ultimate redemption. Yet, as the prime symbol of the Jews, one would imagine that the Western Wall would have been destroyed long ago. So, why does the Western Wall still stand today? The key to understanding this mystery lies in a cryptic verse in the Song of Songs that refers to God standing behind a wall. Over 2,000 years ago, our sages revealed that hidden in this verse is an astonishing prophecy. My beloved is like a gazelle, or like a young stag. There he stands behind our wall, gazing through the window, peering through the lattice. Says our sages, this wall is referring to the western wall of the temple, which will never be destroyed, for the divine presence is in the west. Let us consider this claim for a moment. During its long history, Jerusalem has been attacked 52 times by invading armies, captured 44 times, and destroyed twice. It was ravaged by the Arab Caliphate in 638 CE, then again in 1071 by Turkish warlords, then again in 1098 by the Vizier el-Afdal. During the Crusades, Jerusalem was captured by the Christian Empire, only to return to Muslim hands by Saladin in 1187. This sort of besiegement and conquest over Jerusalem continued mostly unabated for hundreds of years, until the Ottoman Empire, led by Suleiman the Magnificent, decisively captured Jerusalem in 1517. Many of these conquests involved razing significant portions of Jerusalem to the ground. Yet, through all this, the Western Wall remained untouched. The Western Wall stands at the center of one of the most contested areas in human civilization, a symbol of the most hated people in history. Yet, it has stood proudly for thousands of years, a testament to God's promise not to abandon his nation. How could a mortal man confidently declare that the Western Wall will stand forever? What person would gamble on the Western Wall surviving dozens of sieges and armies? It is obvious that a divine force is at work.
Truth is that when they came back in 67, they say that 99 out of 100 shuls were destroyed. And all the Kaisel was a garbage dump. They couldn't do it. So this makes a ration. Just, again, don't make a big speech, let's move on. But this type of thing puts in, first of all, there's something else. Now this is really not negea to you as much, because you're beyond that. But there's such a thing as Jewish pride. In fact, if you look at the Rashi's Hakdoma to Shir Hashirim, the first area of Hisoirus that the Klal Yisrael will have in the Golus will be, they'll be Misoinen al Kvoidim Horishain. They'll look at their matzav bozui now, and they'll think back of the COVID that we had, and that starts the whole shalshelis, and they start thinking about coming back to Hashem and doing tshuva and so forth. But everybody relates to Jewish pride, and this is something nevuah, the Torah, the Bible, and none from people, but at the Arachim seminars they do this lecture towards the beginning, because there's no resistance. That the Bible is a prophetic document, that you don't find prophecies in the New Testament, that you don't find prophecies in the Quran. Excuse me, you do, but they will do and payable in the next world. Nothing that could be tested in this world. And that you have so many of these throughout the Tanakh, and so many that we have seen in history and in our lifetime that have been or are being fulfilled. It leaves quite a ration, even to one who's not yet ready to be makabel the old malchus shamayim. Allah has come of a kamo when we're dealing with moistus like ours, just the chizuk that it gives them. Let's take another one or two of these. Let's see. Maybe the next one, the survival of the Jews.
The story of the Jews is one of the most astonishing and improbable tales ever told. The survival of the Jews from ancient times until today defies all historical precedent. When our nation was young, we were a small kingdom with vastly different values and beliefs than our surrounding neighbors. In a world that believed in a wild and corrupt pantheon of God, each nation clinging to their patron deity, the Jews were the first to introduce the concept of the one supreme God of all creation. This idea was so revolutionary. God was not a corporal, vindictive tyrant. Instead, he is the benevolent, omnipresent source of all reality, who had created this world to bestow goodness onto humanity. With this truth, the Jews brought a moral code of law that is without parallel in any other civilization in history. We were different and outcast to the rest of the world, yet we still clung to our faith. Then, with the destruction of the temple, we were sent into exile. Every other nation in history that has lost their homeland has eventually disappeared, their remnant only visible inside the forgotten books of history. But the Jews persevered despite the exile. We survived the Babylonian exile, where the king Nebuchadnezzar tried to force us to bow to his idols. We survived the genocidal attempts of the Amalekites to wipe us from the face of the earth during the Persian exile. We survived when, 2,000 years ago, the Romans carted all our men off to be sold as slaves or killed for sport in the gladiator ring. Not only did we survive, we flourished. After the Romans razed the Second Temple to the ground, the Jews spread across the world, establishing communities in Europe, China, and the Arabian Peninsula. We flourished wherever we landed, yet we never assimilated. We remained distinct, and despite intense persecution, never compromised our divine mandate. Our unique role angered those around us, and the Jews had to endure punishing crusades, inquisitions, and discrimination by Christians and Muslims alike. Throughout history, Jews have been barred from most businesses, forbidden from owning land, and subject to oppressive taxation. In Europe, this simmering cauldron of anti-Semitism eventually bubbled over into the darkest period of human history, the Holocaust. From 1939 to 1945, Jews across Europe were hunted, tortured, and killed by the millions, all while the world watched silently. Families tried to flee, but the world closed its borders, condemning millions of Jews to die at the hands of the Nazis. But against all the odds, the Jewish nation survived. We rebuilt our homeland and established strong communities around the world. Whether it's a Yemenite Jew who survived 40 generations of mistreatment by his neighbors, or a Polish Jew whose ancestors died rather than kissing the cross, we survived. There is no natural explanation for the survival of the Jews. It is a singular event in history and defies all attempts at naturalistic explanations. There is only one reasonable explanation. God promised Abraham that he would establish an eternal covenant with his descendants. All the events in Jewish history are foretold in the Bible and the prophets, from our exile to our eventual return to our homeland and the ultimate redemption. Our very survival is the most enduring testament to the unique nature of the Jewish people.
Should we try one more? Let's go for this too, and then we'll stop it.
Shushan, capital of Persia, 5th century BCE. Haman's final solution for eliminating the Jewish people is almost carried out, but the tables were turned. And the Jews killed the 10 sons of Haman, scourge of the Jews. And Esther said, if the king sees fit, give the Jews leave to do as today, and hang Haman's 10 sons on the gallows tomorrow. If Haman's 10 sons were already killed, why did Queen Esther ask to have them hanged? The sages say that whenever the word king is written, and not specifically King Xerxes, the reference is to the King of the universe, to God himself. Many years later, it became clear that Esther's tomorrow referred to a next day far in the future. 1945. Germany is vanquished, but the Nazis' final solution systematically murders 6 million Jews. When the war ends, leading Nazi criminals were put on trial in Nuremberg. 11 of them were sentenced to death, normally carried out by firing squad of electric chair, but surprisingly the court decides that they would be hanged.
Judas Streicher, death by hanging. Goering, death by hanging.
A few hours after sentencing, Goering commits suicide, leaving 10 remaining war criminals for execution by hanging. Esther asked for 10, and 10 remained. October 1946, the criminals are hanged one by one. Among them was Julius Streicher, described as the Jews' #1 enemy. CBS News reports from the scene.
We all expected that sometime during the procedure, the shout "Heil Hitler" would ring out. Wild-eyed Jew-maker Julius Streicher yelled off that greeting and followed it as he climbed the 13 stairs with the words, "Now I go to God." Spring Festival 1946 is now to God.
Astonishingly, the Book of Esther has a strange anomaly. The names of Haman's sons are traditionally written with 3 smaller-sized letters, spelling out the Shas, the numerical equivalent of the year 1946, the year that the 10 Nazi war criminals were hanged.
Okay. Now, there might be some issue in terms of appropriateness or age appropriateness of showing some of these things. So that's something you have to decide. But the concept, I think, is very real. That the more that people see and get used to, wow, so strange. So, wow, what's going on over here? And it leaves a ration. But I'd like to, before we continue, because as I was watching this, I was thinking something, and I just want to mention to you, a lot really depends on the depth of our own convictions. This is very delicate. Chazal say that Torah is one of the things that needs constant chizuk. We all need chizuk. Every day we makabel malchus shamayim. Every day we must say emes v'yatzi v'nochim v'toyi v'yofeh. We have to be machazik ourselves, and by some mystical and maybe not so mystical, you know, there's a machlekes, the Goyin and Rabbeinu Yoina. I always forget who. One says that kemayim haponim el ponim kelev odom el odom is something psychologically. If I look at you and I look at me, you see what each one, you know, the face gives off a little bit how we feel. The other one says, I don't remember which one, you see, the Goyin Rabbeinu Yoina, that we don't have to be face to face. It's something mystical. It's something spiritual that people read what's in my heart. It's readable. There's something in the Bria. It's a koyach in the Bria. Whatever it is, but the chashivus haTorah, the clarity of emunah, the depths of the simchas hachayim that we have with Torah is easily conveyed to Talmidim. You know, one of the difficult decisions that a Rebbe has to make. The class is almost over. Give them a couple extra minutes and they'll love you, they'll think you're a hero. But do you send the message that a couple of minutes of learning is not so choshev? Yeah, okay, we finished 5 minutes early today. Give you 5 minutes extra recess. Wow, Rebbe, you're great, you're wonderful, we love you, you're a hero. But is there not a subtle message? And I don't know the answer. I guess it's a balance like everything else in life. But they have to see that the Torah is choshev. They have to see the simcha that we have. They have to see, and I think I may have mentioned this, that we say V'harav no Hashem Elokeinu only on us. And we ask V'ni anachnu b'tzetzoenu. We don't ask it should be pleasant for our children. Because if they see that pleasantness on us, that will affect them. It'll be V'ni anachnu b'tzetzoenu. So whatever we're doing here, and whatever we want to do to be machazik them, we really have to be machazik ourselves. Something, did I tell the story about Rebbe Lopian came to Yerushalayim to say a shmuz? No. Does anybody listen? Okay, no, okay, good. I talk too much, and I mean, you know, besides in this room. So he came, we had to give a shmuz at 8 o'clock. Comes to Yerushalayim 7:30, and he looks for the Mesadrim. And he finds the person, says, I can't speak, I came late. He says, what are you talking about? You came a half hour early. He says, no. If I speak on a topic, I have to spend an hour before learning Musa myself. to feel, to do whatever I can to make it real in me. I came a half hour late, sorry, and he refused to speak. You have to keep that in mind too. The level of commitment, the level of passion, the level of chizuk, the level of chashivus haTorah that we have, that makes a difference. Also, we should know, you can't fake it till you make it with kids. They're too smart. It has to be genuine. They can tell if it's, and they watch like hawks. They watch every inconsistency. In fact, they're specialists in the Rebbeim's inconsistencies. They look for that b'dafka. They'll pay more attention to your inconsistency than to your toisvus or to your learning or to your chumash. We have to be that shining example. Okay. Anyway, so we spoke a little bit about the evidence that we have, and there's so much in the scientific realm, so much in the nevuah realm, information that no human being could have known. And again, a lot of that you'll find here. I think we gave this out also. Some of that you'll find a couple of chapters here. And we're coming out with something new, which I think will be out by the time we finish this.
For
Huh?
sure.
Yeah?
Whatever you want.
So, yeah, we should. At least a limited printing, that which really has a collection of a lot of this material. So a new book, which should be very, very helpful. Okay. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about testimony, okay? Because with testimony, there's a problem, all right? Testimony means we have witnesses, okay? And, we have witnesses, that's true. There were millions of witnesses, a claim that nobody else dared to make. But how accurate is the transmission of that testimony to this day and age? Well, we have to be able to deal with that issue. And once again, the Arachim people, actually this is Dr. Sholem Srebrenik, he was like the conceptual genius in the Arachim movement. I believe he came up with this, what they call the Holocaust Moshel. I don't know if you ever heard that. But basically, I just do it in 3 minutes just to make it very brief, because I think understanding the concept will be helpful. We have Holocaust survivors, not too many left. We want to make sure that in 200, 300, 400 years from now, no one will be able to deny the Holocaust. How would we go about it? So, you're not going to do this exercise with your Talmidim, but just briefly at a seminar, they do this. It depends on the level of the group. But basically, we'll get all the survivors together. We'll have them testify. We'll record the testimony, eyewitness testimony. We'll make sure that before they go home, they gather from all over the world, everyone will have a copy of this testimony. We'll make rules that are ironclad. The written testimony can never be changed under any circumstance. If there ever falls in it a mistake, it must be corrected immediately. This is a precious document. This is our testimony to the world about the Holocaust. But they knew that testimony, in more recent history it becomes easier. In olden days it was impossible, but changes fall in. I mean, impossible I say, because if one change happened here, why should the same change happen here? If in Teiman they changed the word, then the Jews in Germany or in Hungary would know nothing about it. But everybody has the same thing, make sure the same identical document. But even so, we need more than that. So we'll make a club, okay? And the purpose of this club will be to perpetuate the memory of the Holocaust. And we will live a lifestyle which says from generation to generation that we are the descendants, or we are the members of the Holocaust Club. We will have a piece of the Holocaust literature on every doorpost to our houses. Every day we will put on little boxes over here and over here which talk about the Holocaust literature. Once a week we will celebrate, we'll get together with the family and to teach them from the document and to review with them these issues and to remind our children and to pass it on to the next generation that we are the descendants of the Holocaust survivors. And when it comes to the anniversaries of the major events, like the day that we were liberated, so we will all dress up in concentration camp uniforms, and we'll eat the hard bread that they ate and on and on. You could use your imagination, and we will put little fringes on our garments to remind us of all of this, so we're all part of the same club. No one in this club will be allowed to marry out of the club, so we will not dilute the club in any way whatsoever. The only way someone can come from the outside is they accept fully the rules and obligations and commitments of this club, and only then will they be accepted. On the anniversary when we went to Israel, so we will get on boats and spend a week on the boats, traveling out of Europe, and to spend the time being on the way to Israel, and so forth and so on. Commemorations, living a document which can never be changed, a document which will be read publicly every year, each week, and finished in the year. And if a mistake is made, even in the reading, we will embarrass the one who reads it publicly. Although I heard from Reb Moshe that he says you're not allowed to correct the Bar Mitzvah Bocher, because Malbim Nechaber Barab is Doraisa, and the Kriyas HaTorah is at most of the Rabbanon. But anyway, so we go to this extent, and then when we discover that, look, we come to a courtroom, we say, look, we have eyewitness testimony. We have kept the testimony alive. We have the document. We have generation after generation, and not only here, my family, your family, his family, our family, throughout the world, wherever there are Jewish people, they are living the same lifestyle. They're card-carrying members of the club. They do exactly the same thing, and they read exactly the same text, and the texts have never been changed. Compare them. These texts have been separated for so long. It's exactly the same thing. And you come to a courtroom, and like my friend the judge, I think I did mention in California, said, with far less evidence, you've proven your case. And of course, this is what we have. We don't have just a document which has never been changed, which in itself would be living testimony because it's a document, and wherever the Jews were, and the fact that we were spread out in the world makes it much more credible. Because we're so far away, we have no shaykhs one with another, and yet the documents are the same. But we all live the same lifestyle. Yeah, there's little variations. Reb Mordechai Neugershol points out something very interesting. He says that the trop is the tune of the Kriyas HaTorah is influenced by the nations, the host nations where we find ourselves, but not the grammatical stops. The half stop, the full stop, Kadmova, Aslo, Esnachto, this, those are the same no matter where the Jews were, no matter what the tune of their Kriya is. Those things which were halachically significant didn't get lost in the shuffle. Those things which were custom or cultural, okay, Marash, who cares? It's an amazing thing, and this is something that's very significant to do. Now, what I have here, I'm going to give out. Again, I ask that you take it at the end. I apologize. There's only 2 versions. We probably need at least 1 or 2 more versions. But it's basically a one rendering of the genealogy, the Mesorah, from Moshe Rabbeinu, with the years through the Alter Slobodka. And many of you here can fill in the rest. There's even a little space to fill in the rest. We also have a version which takes off at some place in Brisk and goes right down to Reb Chaim Soloveitchik with a mistaken thing. He's called the Brisker Rav over here, so I apologize. He was the Brisker Rav, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so these, I want these we give out. The idea would be, and I've done it with some people, and it's amazing, giving each Talmud in the class one of these things. If you, assume you had a good relationship with him, with your genealogy from Slobodka or Brisk, or we don't have one in the Sephardic world, which maybe someday we'll be able to have, and then the Rebbeim, the Rebbe, and then the Talmud. I gave this out to a guy in the Besmedrash, in Yeshiva Gedolah, and I noticed next day or 2 days later, I walked into his dorm room, hanging right here proudly by his desk. We don't know how these things, but it says a message. Look at the message. Nobody can trace themselves back to any source more than 2 generations. They don't know the grandparents, the great-parents. If they were a doctor, they don't know who their mentor was and who the mentor's mentor was. And this, I right back to the Goyen. I know it in my sleep. And from the Goyen, I have to look over here. Okay. So something I think that's also worthwhile to keep in mind in terms of Mesorah. Okay. I would like to spend a few moments talking about Torah Sheba'al Peh. I think Torah Sheba'al Peh is is very, very critical. And no, before we do that, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about thinking. Many of the obligations, pressures, competitions, and maybe a misreading of the potential of the minds of our students today have led many in our chinuch system to veer from what was the age-old hallmark of Torah Sheba'al Peh, of Torah B'chlal. That was thinking. Question and answer. The Gemara, it's all questions and answers. That's all. What is it? The Rambam defines Torah Sheba'al Peh as Mevin Dover B'toich Dover, Medama Milsa L'Milsa, thinking, thinking and analyzing, challenging. Today, for some reason, it's been minimized. Class size, a material that has to be covered in a curriculum. Sometimes, forgive me, the Rebbe's feeling that he's not prepared enough to answer all of the questions. Sometimes that little kid, I think I mentioned that little kid previously, who is a bigger Balkishran than the Rebbe, even in the 4th grade and the 5th grade and the 6th grade. And unless I really get it clear, this kid will confuse me. And we tend, and nobody's to take this personal, but we tend to underutilize what's the essence of Torah Sheba'al Peh, and that's thinking, analysis. It's very important. A Rebbe is not one who stands in front of a classroom and feeds material. A Rebbe is one who listens to the Talmud, who sees what he's getting wrong, creeps into his mind, who figures it out and straightens him out. That can only happen with interaction. Nothing wrong with not knowing the answer. Today, I came in, Apnei Yoshua, I thought, wow, I was really impressed. In fact, I had such a terrible thought. I said, I think my Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, would also have been impressed. And one young kid just tore the whole thing apart. I tried to say that maybe that's a kasha on the Pnei Yeshua without me, so that's nothing to do with me. I'm not even sure if I got away with that or not. But, but it doesn't hurt. You should be proud. You should be proud that that's the kind of Talmidim you have. But they have to think. And the enjoyment. What do you think the Vaharev knowing Torah is? What do you think the Simchas HaTorah is? It's all. Simcha doesn't come from knowledge. Simcha comes from thinking. Simcha, the greatest Simcha, comes from creativity. That a student answered a question, or that a student asked a good question. And that we must encourage. Because if we don't encourage that, the Chashivus HaTorah is reduced to a minimum. Because it's just like anything else. In fact, when I hear, and I do hear, from people who say, it's just like any other chokhmah. I study chemistry, I study biology, I study mathematics, I study Gemara. What's the difference? What's the difference? There's nothing more scientific than a sugya in Shas. Scientific. It has to be oiskalten. Everything fits. Every step fits. Every language fits. Every havamina fits. There's nothing that doesn't fit. And every meforish who says differently fits because there's two perspectives to look at the same thing. And it's all real. It's Teras Emes. It's Torah Sinai. And they have to feel that. If they feel that, it's a different experience. That's Borosi Yetzer Hora, Borosi Torah Tavlin. I remember once, many years ago, I was a kid. I remember it was in camp. Some camp, I don't want to say too much. And, because whatever. And there were two people that were talking. What does it mean, Torah Tavlin? And I heard both of them. No, I heard one of them, and didn't really have much to say. Torah Tavlin is Torah Tavlin. You learn the Torah. Torah Tavlin. Borosi Yetzer Hora, Borosi Torah Tavlin. And what's so funny? That's what it says. So the other one said, no, it's you get into the depth. You see the beauty. You see what's going on there. Not only the refined concepts, but the refined thinking, the analysis. I'll never forget standing at one of these Arachim seminars, and I introduced the Arachim seminars that we gave a sheer in depth in a sugya. Now, I knew these people didn't understand it. We used to have a couple of people there, my own children, other things, so at least we had a few people to talk to. And there were people there, I went to Harvard, I went to MIT, and I never in my life saw such intellectual rigor and analysis. That's true. There's nothing like it in the world. There's nothing like it in the world. If anybody has, I wanted to bring it, and I thought maybe it's pasnish, so I left it home. one of the newspapers, the Ated or the Hamodia, put out a little kuntras a few weeks ago about the resolution of the problem in New York about the Department of Education trying to enforce curriculum and hours and everything. So there was a professor there from Yeshiva University School of Education, something, and he just wrote on the secular benefits of the yeshiva curriculum. The most beautiful thing, how Pashut learning on whatever level, whether it's Chumash or Mishnayos or Gemara, but the thinking, the analysis, the textual analysis, the back and forth. He describes, he says, these people are prepared for anything in the world. There's no academic course, not in high school, not in college, not in PhD, that can compete with this. It's Kedai to get a hold of it. I just don't remember which one it was. But something like that we have to feel it. And we have to give it over. They have to see that excitement. They have to see that confidence. Do you know what it means? I often thought of it. If I would be teaching in a college class, I would never walk in if my lesson wasn't fully prepared. And I would be able to know what anybody might possibly ask. So I should be prepared to answer. And the reason behind that would be because I'm not sure the material's going to hold water. And they may very well poke holes in it and everything's going to go. Not so in learning. What are you talking about? Of course there's an answer. I may not know it. We'll work on it. But it's there. It's this confidence, this Torah's emes, this not shaykh. And the whole rigorous process. Today we came up with something where the Gemara says that it's trey or trey, and Tosfos assumes that there should be a migul mokum edim, and they have to figure out where the Anan Sadi fits in, and this, and the boundaries. Nobody could disagree with the Gemara, so it has to come out trey or trey. The Yeshua can't say on his own because he's saying Pshat in the Tosfos, so it has to fit with that, it has to fit with this. Everything has to fit, everything has to fit, everything has to be consistent. And even Minei Ubei, we're not talking about Bikiyas and Shafs, and when you ask from all over. You know, the Dvar Avrom, the Kovner Rov, said the following. He said, from my Svarim, it looks like I'm a bigger Boki than Reb Moshe Mordechai Epstein, than Levush Mordechai. He says, because he falostich of his own Bikiyas. I have the Bikiyas of the Achronim. I'm not such a Boki. So I have the Bikiyas of the previous generation. Today, even with all the Eitzrus or whatever else we have, the Neisei Kalim and the basic Meforshim bring everything you have to know. But get them into it, get them excited, challenge them. I don't know. Anyway, enough is enough. Did I discuss Machlokes in Chazal? Sure?
Machlokes.
What? Who's the Machlokes? Who said yes? No, not really? No. Okay, so I hope there's no repetition here. I really tried to do this professionally, I must tell you. I write a note before, and I review the note after, and then I wrote the next note and try to see that I'm booked. But that's not enough. Anyway, I can't do a script. That much I don't know how to do. The one time I scripted a speech, it was the worst speech I ever made in my life. I don't do that anymore. Anyway, so let's talk for a moment about Torah Sheba'al Peh and Machlokes. The system of Torah Sheba'al Peh is really very simple. The Torah Shebichsav is a useless document without a Torah Sheba'al Peh. We know that. We all know that. We wouldn't know what tefillin are. We certainly wouldn't know what tofos are. We wouldn't know what a sukkah is. We wouldn't know where you put a mezuzah. We wouldn't know anything about anything. It's all, and therefore, Torah Sheba'al Peh had to be taught to Moshe Rabbeinu because the Torah that he was given and that he gave over would have been useless without a Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh was passed down from generation to generation. We even know the names, and there are probably many more chains of Messiah. We even know the names of the generation to generation, or many of the generations to generation that it was passed down to. The Gemara says, let's start with something else. The Orach Chaim Chaim asked a kasha. I didn't tell you this. Moshe Rabbeinu was showed the Beis Medrash of Rebbe Akiva. That I did. Oh, so that's it. Okay. So that we know. So we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was taught the Psukim, Moshe Rabbeinu was taught the Halachas, and where to find each one in Torah Shebichsav. That's the avodah of the Chachmei Adoros, and that way the Torah was also the Torah Shabbat was also preserved, because by having two sources we got a clearer picture of what it was, and if anything, like by the time of Evlei Shel Moshe Rabbeinu, anything was forgotten, they'd be able to restore it. Okay. Came along a doer from Hillel and Shammai, Hillel and Shammai. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that was Nisrabu Talmidim Shel Shimshu Kol Tzorchom. Machlekes started. Nisrabu Machlekes B'Yisrael. That was the critical point. That's Machlekes. Now Machlekes is really, for us, a very fortunate thing. Because once there was a generation where they didn't fully understand what the Rebbe said, then the best way of figuring it out is the argument between the two Talmidim. He's heard the Rebbe say this. He understood the Rebbe meant this. Well, but it couldn't mean this, but it must be that. But why do you say this? Why do I say that? Back and forth. And that's the way we have today, clarity of any concepts that we have. It's because of the fact that there is machlekes and Torah Shabbat Peh. The legitimacy of this machlekes, it seems from the Sforim, is that what they saw when they didn't understand the Rebbe fully was a piece, was a perspective, not the total picture. I sang Frere Jacques here last time. Never sang Frere Jacques for you? Who am I talking to in my dreams? I'm sure I did Frere Jacques recently. Okay, so now different perspectives. Before, when Moshe Rabbeinu passed it down, the Chazal say, Kol Mashetal Mevosik Osel Chadash Nitla Moshe B'Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu was taught everything, even the Machleksin, and even the not full comprehension of what the Rebbe said from the start of the times of Hillel and Shammai to this very day, a Talmud Vosik, it was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu, but he didn't pass it down. He passed it over as this united concept. Gemara says they were memtes time in Lahatim, memtes time in Leso, Lifso, V'Lahachshir, all Miroe Echod. He knew that, but Lemaisa he passed down the concept. Then when the Doyer became Lo Yishtamshu Kol Tzorcham, so they began to see only a perspective. Now, only a perspective, we would say that's tragic, that we don't have the Dvar Hashem. Hashem wanted this, and we only have this. We're in trouble. So first, I would like to explain something about perspective so that maybe it doesn't seem to be such a terrible tragedy. The singing will be a little bit terrible, but other than that, yeah? There's a little French song. It's called Frere Jacques. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Frere Jacques, dormez-vous, Sonny le matina. Are you sleeping, Brother John? The morning bells are ringing. And the French in French say, Dan, Dan, don. That's the morning bells are ringing. What? The Americans copied this. It's a French song to begin with. And they say, brother, are you sleeping, brother? The morning bells are ringing. Ding, dong, ding. The Israelis didn't want to be left out. And they said, Apamo with tzalzel, tzil, tzil, tzil. The Russians, I heard, say boom, boom, boom. So now, you got a boom and a tzil, and a dan, and a don, and a ding. Who's out of his mind? Who's hard of hearing? Who manufactured different bells in different cities? There's this bullshit. That bell that rings has all of these sounds in it. And if someone would have supersonic sound, and I don't know if that's the word for it, I don't know anything about that, but we have a super, they say certain animals have super, kishrenis and sound abilities, that he would hear all this. He would see the total picture, how in this, I don't know what to say, till, ding, dong, bang, boom, in this sound that comes out, he would hear a till, and a ding, and a boom, and a dan, and it's all there. It's a piece of it. It's a perspective of it. But we don't have that hearing anymore. Our hearing is according to the culture that it's been developed in, and therefore we can't hear certain sounds. Is an Israeli can't hear the difference between a pen and a pan, because there's no a pen and a pan. There's no in Hebrew. It's either a pen, and a pan. Yeah, that's right. They can't tell the difference because there's o and e. No, there's a, pa, or pan. No, pan. There's no eh. That sound doesn't exist. So a pen, you ask them for a pen, they'll give you a pen. You ask them for a pen, they'll give you a pen. They wouldn't know what you're talking about. Anyway, that's Israelis who've been here for many years. The same thing, I know. Anyway, the kids are like this. So, Lamaisa, that's different perspectives. Oh, well, Lamaisa, you got kids. They want to do what the Ratzon Hashem is. What does Hashem want from me? The Machlekes in the Mishnah. Do you say Borei Pri Hagofen and then Mekadosh Shabbos, or Mekadosh Shabbos Borei Pri Hagofen? Shammai and Hill, Shammai Beis Hill. What do you do? Or the Mitzvah of Shrisas Kelev? Ain't no Mitzvah of Shrisas Kelev. What do I do? So many Machlekes. Agav, you should tell the guy that says why there's so many Machlekes. Tell him if there's 100,000 Machlekes, maybe there's 500,000 Machlekes, I don't know. There's 10 million agreements. There's much more agreement. They're arguing in Hilchos Shabbos, but everyone agrees to 39 Loch. Everyone agrees when Shabbos comes. Everywhere. So don't get fooled by all these machlokes, the terrible thing. And the machlokes is really the secret of the survival of the Torah. Because of that machlokes, I can begin to see, what does this mean? What does this mean? Why doesn't he agree with this? Why is he with this? What's his problem with him? What's his problem with him? Why can't they agree on there? And then you compare it to the psukim, and before you know it, you have all, and you get the kids involved, and they're thinking, wow, you got them for life. But anyway, I want to repeat that sentence. If you get them thinking, you got them for life. If those that start thinking later on, and they think that they've thought thoughts which are anti-Torah, a little bit, if not a lot, it has to do with they think this is the first time they're thinking. And if they were thinking in the rigorous thinking process, which is truly Torah Shebaal Peh, of an emes, then nothing else could come close. That's thinking. Darwin is thinking. Science is thinking. Oh yes, we think. How will we explain the existence of life? Well, let's just add another couple billion years, and then we can do this, and let's add a few more billion, and we'll have that, and then this can happen. There's no use for these 14 different movements that happen in between in order to get to this point. Well, that doesn't matter. Survival of the fittest and the not so fittest. We'll modify the theory, whatever we'll do. I don't know anything about this stuff, but anyway, somebody who's learned. In fact, I'll tell you something else. You may have guessed, I'm a big chassid of these Arachim seminars. Agav, we hope to put on one on Memorial Day weekend. That was on Labor Day weekend in some Bushkill or something, Pennsylvania, for non-from people. If anybody has any want to recommend, that'd be a very good thing. You have no idea; it could be an amazing program. But anyway, I tell people like this: you don't have to show me that there was a Maimon Har Sinai. I go there every day. I spend a good part of my day at Har Sinai. I wish I'd spend more time, but today Har Sinai costs money, so we've got to raise money too. But anyway, and other things. But I don't this. What? The Pnei Yeshua, to me, is the greatest proof in the world of the Borei Olam and the Amitis HaTorah and the accuracy of the Messiah and the Siyata Dishmaya that the Rebbeinu Shalom sends us to understand His Torah today. Ki Hashem Yitei Chochma Mipiv Dasu Svuna. That's all. But if they could feel that, different story. Anyway, let's get back. Machlekes. Machlekes is bothering them. So I want to share with you what I believe is a mahalach that can deal with machlekes. I heard once from the Navardik Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yankiv Yafin, the Gemara in Shabbos. I didn't say this. I tell you, where am I talking? Do you know any place else I'm talking like this? I don't know. Maybe I dream about these things at night. I don't know. Anyway, so he said the Gemara says that Koisvei Tefillin and Mezuzah, so Yerushalmi, the Ches, I think, Daf Tes. So if they're potter from mitzvahs, because of that Talmud Torah should also have a din of Isik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. Fine. So the Rishalmi says like this. Wants to bring a raya. Didn't Rab Shimon Yochai sit in the sukkah? Didn't he hold haloy min shalom anas lasos noach loshen nivro? That's the lotion of the Rishalmi. So Rabbi Yafin asked the question. He said, "That's why Rab Shimon Yochai sat in the sukkah." Well, the Gemara says lulav, sukkah, both. Maybe I forget. He says that's why he should sit in the sukkah. The Torah says you have to sit in the sukkah. He was only potter from tefillah. So mechuyev in mitzvahs. So what? Terosim nosa, you're not mechuyev. You're not potter from mitzvahs. She says, didn't he sit in the sukkah? Didn't he hold shalom hanoim and shalom aslasas noach lo shalom nivra? So what's that all about? He says like this. The emes is the Torah is the ikar. And if a person would be Torah asum nosa, he should be potter from all mitzvahs. He shouldn't have to do mitzvahs. Because the Torah, and I may be adding just a little nakuda to it, I'm not sure how much, to what degree he explained it, because the Torah is the meshabed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the tachlis. When I learn Almanas Lasos, I'm meshabed myself to the Dvar Hashem. And that's the ikar. Merit, if you won't do the mitzvah, it'll be a pgia in the Almanas Lasos. What kind of learning Almanas Lasos do you have if you're not doing the mitzvahs? Therefore, Rab Shimon Yochai had to do the mitzvahs today. His learners of Leiben and learning Almanas Lasos. Backwards from everything we ever thought, right? We're learning to be Almanas Lasos, and the mitzvahs are only a mile in the Torah. The mitzvahs are a mile in the Torah. That now my Torah is Almanas Lasos, which is the ultimate. So I'd like to take this one step further. We just read last week. Again, I have that deja vu. We just read last week in Parshas Bahar. I'm wondering, maybe you guys are just nice to me. Anyway, we just read last week in Parshas Bahar, at the very end, where it says where a Jew is sold, a Jew is sold to a goy as an eved because he stole or because he was poor, and the Torah writes a posuk that avodahim and that Shaloi Taimru, Rashi brings us it free. Ma Rabbi Avidazor Afani Kamoyu. Ma Rabbi Shefich Domim Afani Kamoyu. Ma Rabbi Machal Shabbos Afani Kamoyu. Talmud Loimar, Avodai, whatever it is that you're my Avodim, even though my Shibud is Toidim. Shaila is, what Jew who sold as an Eved to a Goy is going to want to emulate his master to the extent Ma Rabbi Ovid Avedazora, not a mushpa from the Sviva. Ma Rabbi Ovid Avedazora, Afani Kamoyu. Ma Rabbi Machal Shabbos, it's Stam and Narishkeit, then you have to work on Shabbos too. At least Choch tell him you're Hashem Shabbos, so you won't have to work on Shabbos. Ma Rabbi Machal Shabbos, Afani Kamoyu. What kind of psychology is it? The teretz is, there's a psychology, they call it in psychology, the Stockholm Syndrome, that when someone is meshabed you want to identify with the meshabed. I would like to suggest, lahavdil elef alfei havdolis, that the same psychology works in Avodas Hashem. When we learn Torah Almanas Lasos, we're meshabed ourselves to Hashem. When we're meshabed ourselves to Hashem, that creates the greatest dachaf, the greatest push, the greatest cheshek, the greatest taiva to be like the Rabbeinu Shalom. And that's the tachlis of the Bria. The tachlis of the Bria is shleimus amidas. The tachlis of the Bria is dveikus b'Hashem. And in order to be dovek b'Hashem, a person has to reach a certain shleimus here, so he can be both worthy of the schar and roy to be makabel that hatova. So really, the shibud is the tachlis, because shibud brings me to emulating Hashem. Every time that Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvos v'tzivonu, that tzivui creates in me this matzav that es will sich sein wie der Rebbeinu Shalom. Creates that passion to emulate Hashem, which is the tachlis of everything, to bring a person to shleimus. So it really doesn't matter which mitzvahs you do. And I mean, don't take that out of context and don't say that in the classroom. But the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't mind if you say Bar Priya Gofen and then Kiddush, or Kiddush and Bar Priya Gofen, depending on whether you're Talmid Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Because the ikar is you learn the sugya, Almanas Lasos, you are Masik Shmaitza, Aliba de Hilchasa, and that's Torah Sinai. Torah Sinai tolerates machlekes. Because that's not the Iker. The Iker is the Loimen Almanas Lasso, it's the Shibud LaKodesh Baruch Hu. And Kol Masha Talmud Vosik Osel Chadish Nitno Meshri Sinai. So if you're worried about that, your Rebbe's thing was not the one that was given at Sinai, don't worry. Moshe Rabbeinu was taught both. He was not told to give it over. It was only given over when Machlekes started. But he was taught both, so that it becomes in the gather of Torah Sinai. And I think that now again, at the younger ages, this doesn't become a question. But at the older ages, they should get a sense of it before it becomes too big a question. Torah Sheba'al Peh is the greatest Yetzer Hara. Torah Shebachsav seems so easy. Maisa, you could do whatever you want with your elbow on Shabbos too. You know what I mean? So you can do all the Lamakas Melochas like this. So they're not so threatened by it. Torah Sheba'al Peh, Rabbonon, they're so much, so overwhelming. So and they have to understand how the system works in order to be able to deal with it, to live with it, to appreciate it. And when they learn, and we can connect that learning of the system and the accuracy and the loyalty to Messiah, the state in the Gemara, that's fact. Nothing can budge. Tosfos says that's the. When they see that, and they know to the extent that we searched for truth, it's a whole different story. You know, B'chlal, where do you ever find a system in knowledge where the system is built upon asking questions on greater people? That's what it is. That's what our system is, right? You have a Mishnah, Tanoim. These Amoraim, they're asking questions on Tanoim. You have Balei Tosfos. Who do you think you are? On Amoraim. Tanim Shebahem U'Machayim Mesim, and the Balei Tosfos have questions back and forth. Oh, what's going on over here? This is emes. This is the greatest indicator of emes. And the emes is even when there's machlekes, because the emes is the Rebbeinu Shalom wants shibud, and the tachlis of shibud is that personal elevation to emulate, to be doimel Hashem, which is the tachlis of everything. Agav, when you talk to your talmidim about emulating Hashem, that's the most validating thing they could hear. Not only, as we mentioned early on, do we have a purpose, and therefore we can be happy. Not only do we know that our purpose is our true purpose because it was given to us by the Borei Olam. Not only do we know that the Borei Olam gave it bifnei kol am va'eda, in front of millions of eyewitnesses, so that it should be very clear that this is our true purpose. Not only do we know that he appointed Moshe Rabbeinu as his official spokesman, bifnei am va'eda, a few million nefashos, that we should all know that Moshe Rabbeinu speaks the Dvar Hashem. But the purpose of the Dvar Hashem is to elevate me, to make me godly. Wow, that's it. And the shibudim that you don't like, that's the greatest gift that the Borei Olam ever gave you. Because that's what allows you to feel good about yourself. You know how good I feel about myself? Me and him, we're great. I did mention Kedoshim Tiyu. Kedoshim Tiyu. Chazal say, the Sifri, I think, Yochel Kamoini, Talmud Loim Ani Hashem Elokeichem. If not for the Ani Hashem Elokeichem, but ich gemeint that when the Torah says Kedoshim Tiyu, it means like Hashem Mamish. Torah says Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Yochel Kamoini, no, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, not quite. Do you know how flattering that is? You know how elevating that is? You know how validating that is? Wow. This is the way they have to feel, and they can feel this way, and that can make a big difference. All right, I'd like to speak just for a few moments about one more topic, and then I would like to take time for some conversation and discussion, because there hasn't been too much of that. And it's one of the things I was preaching, so I guess you should practice what you preach. Suffering. We did mention, I think, I hope, build them up in the Hakor of the Chesed Hashem. Introduce them to Hashgocha Protis at the earliest stage. Make them realize and see the Chesed Hashem in the Bria. So then when they see things that are confusing, it'll be easier to deal with because, okay, I know his credentials, I know his track record. Okay, so now I got a couple of things that just mind-boggling, but we'll live with that. But we do have to be able to deal with the issue of suffering, because it's a very big issue. Already today yesterday there was another tragedy. It's tragedies all the time. Got to be very careful, because a great person once said, if you attempt to explain the Holocaust, you insult the memory of the people who perished. It's a cheap thing to do. Oh, I'm going to tell you why there was a Holocaust. Try that to a Holocaust survivor. Try that to the children of a Holocaust survivor. Take it easy. What do you know? Who do you think you are? What? You gotta be very careful to tread very, very lightly. I'll never forget once in a speech where I was speaking about the Nevuos in Parshas Ha'azinu. One of the Nevuos in Parshas Ha'azinu, I should do a video on this, but it's too small, is that one of the things says, I haven't spoken about it for a long time. This I remember, I didn't say it for a long time. Ketev Mariri, what does it say in Ha'azinu? What? Who? Yeah, it says Ketev Mariri, but then it says in Ketev Yoshut Sohoroim. That's right. In the Tilim it says Ketev Yoshut Sohoroim, and there it says Ketev Mariri, I think. So anyway, so the Malbim says that refers to, and the Malbim was written before the turn of the 20th century, says Avir Arsi Memis, poisonous gas. Poisonous gas was not used until the First World War by the Germans in the First World War. But the Malbim, who died 20 years before that, wrote about that. And in Ha'azinu we're talking about mamish events that resemble the Holocaust according to the Goyin's Cheshbon. That was the right century, and so forth and so on. It was shocking. Anyways, I said, you see, even the gas chambers are marumas in the Torah. And I always thought I was giving a good lecture, and this Yidel over here, a Holocaust survivor, screams out, Dem Toiva Binechem Moichel. That he told me in the Torah that it's there. I'm Moichel that Toiva. Like what? I saw, like, wow, I shouldn't have been talking about this. So you got to be very, very careful. Okay, but Lamaisa, we have to talk. So the first thing I think that we have to know, and that eventually we may have to let people know, there's no such thing as an intellectual kasha on Hashem. All questions are emotional. What are you going to ask him? You're going to ask Einstein about a question on his theory of relativity. I actually have a few questions I would want to ask him. No idea what, I don't know. Nothing. Zero. Ask him a question. Eventually Hashem answered Eov and said, Eifo ha'yisa b'yosti oretz. Hey, you weren't around from the beginning of the world. You can't possibly know everything that's going on. So we have to know the questions. But the questions are emotional. And the emotional questions are more painful than the intellectual questions. Because the emotional questions there's no answers for. Because it hurts. What are you going to answer my emotional pain? With a logical answer? Agav, there is an emotional answer to pain. I'll never forget sitting Shiva in Yerushalayim many, many years ago. My Shver's house, and Gedolei Yisrael, Gedolei Yerushalayim came to be Menachem Ohel. I'm sitting there, and Reb Chaim Shmulevitz was sitting in the corner, right over there. 20 minutes crying like a baby. Crying like a baby, the whole time. Not one word came over, Moki Menachem Eschem. That's the only thing I remember. Not the only thing, but that's left such a ration. Somebody feels your pain. The emotional answer, or one of the emotional answers to suffering, is someone feels my pain. Don't jump to answer, don't jump to explain, don't jump to say, you know exactly why Hashem does things in this world, but feel the pain. So important. That's the whole Nichem Avelim. You come sometimes to Nichem Avelim, so you're going to make a whole speech. First of all, they heard the speech from the last rabbi that was there. And second of all, they're not interested in your speeches. They know it all. Feel their pain. Secondly, if they're upset and they're angry, you have to validate that too. Yeah, I understand. Understand? It's normal the way you feel. It's normal the way you feel. Most people would feel that way. Validation goes a long way to relax a person. Because ultimately, more than anything else, is we want to feel good about ourselves. And even though I have great pain, a feeling of good about myself will counter that to a great measure. And once that happens, by the way, there's an opening to talk. And I would like to suggest that the opening to talk is as follows. In Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, so we say, Ish bar lo yedoch si lo yoven esois. The fool can't understand. Why can't the fool understand? Bifrach rishoim k'mo Esav, v'yotzitzu kol poel yomen, he showed them adayad, that the Rosh is pereach in this world to be destroyed forever in the next world. Why can't the fool understand that? That's very logical. The teretz is, it's not a logical question. It's an emotional question. Why the tzaddik is going through so much when the Rosh is having it so good? He's going to have it bad over there, and he's going to have it good over there. That world is eternal, this world is cheap, and it's over before you know it. It's hard. It's emotional. And you see that from the Sipurna because he learns tzaddik hatomer yifroch is the answer. What's the answer? What kind of answer is that? Ish bar lo yedo. There's this emotional question. So what's the answer? And you see it's the answer because it says at the end, the tzaddik is pereach. Or yeduvim b'seiv, or this shade of an ananim, even in old age, he's still doing mitzvahs, he's still spreading out his wings. Lehagid ki yosher Hashem tzuri. This teaches that Hashem is yosher. V'lo yavlo saboy, that there's no avla. How does it teach that there's no avla? What's going on over here? The teretz is, the question is only emotional. And the answer is, look at the tzaddik. Look at his commitment. Look at his mesiras nefesh. Look at how to the last breath of life he's still trying to do the mitzvahs and serve Hashem. The tzaddik who is basing his life and emulating his creator. Lahagid ki yosher Hashem. Logical it's not, because it wasn't a logical question, but emotional. And the answer to so much of emotional pain is positive emotional experiences. One of the most powerful ways to counter, and today, in your generation, and not doing it so much, it's almost forgotten. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. I guess it's a little of both. But one of the ways that people were able to counter the suffering of Holocaust survivors was or people who were unnerved by such an event as, maybe you saw very too graphically for your kids in some of these presentations, was by seeing the nisim that took place. There must have been, no one has a calculation, but certainly there were a few million people who were saved, and multi-millions of nisim went into saving these people. And if you stop a Holocaust survivor, I'll never forget, I had a guy drove me in Yerushalayim many years ago, and he said he's angry at Hashem, the family, and lost in the Holocaust. And I said, how'd you get here? He starts telling me a story. You could make a movie out of it. So I said, that's miraculous. He says, I never thought of that. So that's the only answer. The only answer is emotional. We have to strengthen it. We have to use every possible emotional technique that we could have to Hashgacha Protis is an emotional answer. The Mesiras Nefesh of the tzaddikim, even in giving their lives, is an answer. The nisim that happened to so many people that saved them from the Holocaust is an answer. Suffering is an emotional question. It has to be addressed. It's best addressed before it comes by a deeper appreciation of the Chesed Hashem. And when after it comes, it can't be addressed intellectually head on. In fact, I don't know if I mentioned this, but Eov was only told this Sefer Yisa B'Yos Dioris in Perek Lamed Ches, after he had suffered so much and spent so long a time trying to figure out what it was about, and he was frustrated, he couldn't figure it out. And the posuk before, Rashi learns, was meramis to him that he's going to have his 10 children again, and his wealth again, and his health. Only then was he being able to savor the truth of Evo Yisi B'Yos Dioris, which means it's not so simple to say, we don't understand. In fact, somebody was in my office recently suffering, terrible suffering, and this individual was able to repeat every sentence there was about suffering, and every sentence there was about all the tzoros and everything we know, and yet couldn't handle it because it's an emotional thing. People don't want to hear terutzim. Sometimes a scenario after a while that could maybe understand something, this, maybe that could help sometimes. But they really don't want to understand. They want just to feel emotionally that I can counterbalance the emotional pain that I have with positive emotions. My positive emotions of empathy for them, and their positive emotions that they can appreciate and understand what's going on. I don't know what the deal is here, but I was told that just yesterday was put on to Torah Anytime. I don't know if people have access to that. A lecture that I gave on a yahrzeit of a young man that passed away, and people told me already just from yesterday that it was very, very powerful, and it has a lot more direct movements and ideas which can help with suffering. It's available if anybody's interested. If we can actually, I imagine it's on our website too. And okay, and then I want to just mention one more thing. I didn't have enough copies. We have to reprint. This is something that we did many years ago. It's a pirush on the Shemona Esrei, just how it could be machazik bitochen. The Goin says the sheirish of tefillah is from the posuk of Re'oi Ponecha Loi Pilolti. And Rashi says over there, Loi Mla'ani Li Belachshiv. Yaakov says, I didn't allow myself to ever think positively that I'd see you again. It's like a hope. It's like a type of bitochen. So this was written on how in tefillah, when one thinks about it, how each phrase, it's through the whole Shemona Esrei, can inspire bitochen. Rebbeim have told me they use it with their classes. One Rebbe in one of the fine yeshivas told me he davens himself from it every day. So I wouldn't get carried away like that. I don't have copies, but it is. I checked this afternoon. I asked someone. It is on our website. That's priority-1.org. And so are these other things and a lot of other material. In fact, there is a whole, I don't have copies, I should have. There's another book about advice from Machanech. There's this one that you have. There's a book on Shir Hashirim, which is very letter of love, it's called, very powerful. This one I just mentioned. There's about raising amazing children, which Reb Nosson over here is the one that wrote that. Reflections of the Heart, something talking about the mitzvahs and Yomim Tovim and Shabbos and this in a very positive, meaningful way. Securing our future is all about parenting. There's a Bitochen reader all about different aspects of Bitochen. And then the Torah Min HaShamayim over here. And
the USBs here.
What's that?
There's USBs for everyone to take also.
Oh, really? Oh, the USBs are what? On the...
All the Shiurim
Oh, they have
videos.
this. Oh, they have a lot of this stuff on there and the videos. Okay, thank you very much. Now let's take whatever time we have left to hear from you. And I can tell you one thing in all sincerity: criticism is very constructive. I'll tell you why. First of all, usually I could turn it around and deal with it. But more than that, you want to help people, and hopefully, we do more of these things. And anyone who can offer any suggestions or objections is very much appreciated. And if there are questions or other things, we could also try to deal with that. Could be I can handle criticism better than I can handle questions, but that's besides the point.
Talk about friendship.
What's that?
Talk about friendship.
Okay. Could you just talk a little louder? It's hard for me to hear.
Talk about friendship, about befriending Talmidim and being small.
Okay.
When you befriend someone, a younger Talmud like that, is there a necessity to make some sort of boundaries, or if you respect them, they'll give mutual respect back to you? Like, what's the...
Well, that's a good question. Generally speaking, and that's a good way to answer questions. That's a good question. If you notice now, you listen to all these talk shows, everybody says, "Oh, that's a very good question," and then they must have taught them. Just like in the supermarkets, they teach them to say, "Good morning, how are you?" It's so mechanized. It's so unreal. Well, oh, that's a good question. Anyway, but it is a good question. So I like this. I think it goes like this. There have to be boundaries. There's no question. But the boundaries are not like Trump would have them with walls around you. Sorry. Oh no, he's right on the border, but not on the human boundaries. That's not. Boundaries will come, as you said, if there's respect. Mutual respect is part of mutual respect is respecting my boundaries, respecting my space, respecting my time. Those are boundaries. Respecting my feelings. So that there are natural boundaries, and one should not lower. For example, I'll give you the extreme example because other examples are more subtle. I know rebbeim that will choose to use inappropriate language together just to be one of the boys, and that may even do some inappropriate or semi-appropriate things just to be one of the boys. No, that's no good. And it's no good for many reasons. First of all, I don't think it's permissible. But even more than that, they want to respect you. They want to respect the one they love. They want to love the one they respect. So the friendship, I want to respect. But one thing I will say, when there's close friendship, there's a little bit less formal covet. But they'll give their life for you. They'll do anything you tell them to do. You have them, that you can be mashpia on them. They'll anything you say. So, in terms of the goals of chinuch, you accomplish more. And any respect that Chazal, that Halacha expected us to have from Talmidim was only for the purpose that they should be able to learn from us. So, we have to be practical. Just as you'll find in Shulchan Aruch, you can embarrass a Talmud. You can hit. Don't you dare, either of them. Because why? That was all for the purpose of learning. Today, that's not going to get them to learn more. It'll get them to learn less. And it'll turn off the rest of the class too. Do you know, when you embarrass a kid, the ones that hate you the most are the rest of the class. The kid knows he did something wrong. Yeah, all right, so okay, it wasn't so nice. He learns, he copes with it. The others say, what a hypocrite. Yeah. Who you fooling? So, anyway, so we have to, the goal has to be what is going to accomplish the goals of chinuch, and a close, loving relationship will certainly do it. Now, I don't know enough about it, but there are boundaries that today, just for practical reasons, we have to keep. Because we live in a meshuggah society, and before you know it, your picture will be in the newspaper, So you got to be careful about those things, but that's. But it's definitely worth more. Yes.
You were advocating very much for the concept. I think you mentioned something about there's a certain school of thought in chinuch, in the classroom setting, that you don't crack a smile till Hanukkah. I've heard this from top Mechanchim. It's anybody who thinks that you can be buddy-buddy with them never tried to teach a classroom. So the question basically is, like, nowadays especially, children are really looking to get out of anything they can. It's a work in terms of responsibility. They're trying to break down any sort of decorum. So on one hand, how do you facilitate having a good relationship with them? It's not a shame. How do you build the concept that you want them to respect you? How do you straddle both ends of the
That's really a good question, but it is. So what I think is as follows. There's definitely the goal. See, I look at it this way. Let's put it this way. If you're a secular teacher, then I could buy that. The goal is information. That's the goal. The secular classroom, get the information, by us it's the regents, by you, I don't know what it is, but that's it, get the information. Our goal is not information. Our goal is life itself. Our goal is a direction in life. Our goal is a ben Torah. Our goal is a passionate and lasting commitment to Yiddishkeit. And to get that, if there's no relationship and if it's all tough business, you're probably not moving too close to that goal. So I definitely will stand behind it, although I didn't mean to be derisive in any way about people who do say that, but I don't agree with it, that, don't smile. You must smile. And you not only smile, you have to love. But you have to create an environment where there are certain basic expectations. I would advise personally, not too many. A few, 3, 2, 3, 4. And those expectations are absolute. And from the very beginning, they know, with a smile, with love, with explanation of why those expectations are critical. We cannot have, for example, we can't have people doing what? Let's say, disturbing the class from learning from the other people's learning, making noises and this and that. Well, but there's no expectation that they can't. I have a guy, maybe I mentioned it here, who walks around me, does hakofis in the shir every day. Hakofis all around. And he's brilliant, and he challenges everyone there, and it's not shaykh. A day that he's not there is like, oh, but he has to walk around the whole time. Does the same thing in davening. People don't know what he's doing. That's it. Everybody has his thing, but what's the big deal? So what? Well, if somebody would walk in the room, they think something's wrong with me. So what? Big deal. I'd rather they think something's wrong with me. So, if you have a few basic expectations, and you have consequences, you need consequences. But the consequences are clear, they're educational, they're almost as if when you violate or when you compromise or when you don't live up to the expectation, you've chosen the consequence. So we're not fighting. That's the consequence. If the consequence is if you fight with somebody in the classroom, let's say if that's one of your things, I don't know, you have to pick a few very important things. Then the consequence is you have to go home and write a paper on the V'ahavta Re'echo Kamocha. That's it. There's no talk. If you don't, can't come back to class until you do it. And that I do that for your benefit, not for my benefit. For your benefit as a human being, and for their benefit as a class that has a right to learn. You have the same right to learn. And therefore, with this person, I will do the same thing. And when you have a few things like that, now listen, the other system will keep your kids, yes, you have to have your finger on the place. Very important. My kid figure out. This kid has it all in his brain. He doesn't just finger on the place. He knows it by heart. Oh, no, you have to finger on the place because that's what, you have to sit like this because that's the rule. That's ridiculous. That's the way I see it. If you pick a few meaningful, powerful, critical expectations and the consequences which are educationally relevant and sound, you will have a classroom with the love and the warmth that is relatively at peace. Learning may have some more interruptions than the other class, but the kids will be with you. The kids will be learning. The kids will be imbibing. The kids will be changing. The kids will be mushpa because of the relationship and just the bare minimums with explanation, with educational consequences. I think that's my opinion. What can I tell you? Yes?
I wanted to say that. I heard Matt Horowitz.
Listen, the signing in. You have the thing?
I have the thing.
What? Wait. So, can someone take attendance or something? So pass something around. No, I'm sorry. Can someone just pass around? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Matt Horowitz was also very dismissive of the school of thought.
I'm sorry.
Matt Horowitz was also very dismissive of the school of thought of Sholem Bailos.
Of?
Sholem Bailos, you change your seat the first day. That whole thing. There's also a book about the first day of school. There's a picture of a teacher standing by his door, walking over him with a smile. But he says, it's not a Jewish book, but he says that's the Malach, it's a relationship.
The difference is, look, if you want it easier for the year, the other way is probably easier. If you want to accomplish, that's not the way. If you want to teach, that may be the way. If you want to reach, that's surely not the way. That's the way I see it. Anything else? Yeah.
How about rules that are just to elevate the derech eretz to the Rebbe? Like no sitting in his seat, no putting things on his desk, and
Okay.
I Like when I was a kid, we all had to stand up when the Rebbe walked into the room.
Yeah, okay. Now, I don't know what to say. I do know what to say. I'm debating whether to say it. Why does the Rebbe want this derech eretz? If he wants it for the kids to learn better, they won't. If he wants it because he wants to feel that security or that chashivus or that, maybe you should get another job. It's not the way. It's not the way. The focus is not on me and my COVID. The focus is on the Talmidim.
Teach them code at Torah.
Well, you see, the Kovod HaTorah will come more from learning, being exciting about learning. See, Kovod, for example, Kovod, standing up. I'll ask you a question. Oh. Yeah. Again, did I mention it? But in the Chinuch, the Sefer Chinuch, a few weeks ago, Emor maybe, says that the Indian of not working on Yontif. I think it's talking about the Yom Rishon Shel Pesach. So he says because there's a message, and you want to be able to get the message in. And if you're working, you're Torah and you work, you won't get the message in. And then he says, and if you'd even be allowed to do a little bit of work, it would also affect it. It will become like a Yom Choil, and the COVID of the day would be lost. So I said, he's talking about the message. And what about the COVID? So there has to be, the Yontif has to be mechubed in order to get the message in. But you see, that's the Yontif. But the Yontif, there is such a thing. You know, I'm saying there is such a thing as COVID, the message will get it better. But when the Rebbe is makbid on his COVID, then that puts a barrier between them. That means the Rebbe's worried about his COVID, the Rebbe's worried about his ego, the Rebbe's worried about his the Anovim Yerushu Oretz. The Onov gets much more obedience and interest and commitment and following and emulating than the person who is. It doesn't work today. And Bechlal today, see, there was a time when in the world there was COVID. You know, in the world there used to be COVID. You know how they used to get dressed up for a mechubadik occasion? Top hat, tails, gloves. You ever see those pictures? The inauguration of Roosevelt or somebody like that? You know, today, what do? What's COVID? No clothing. That's COVID. You're going to a chassid, get undressed. You know, I'm not talking in our societies, but that's what they do. Mishuga. There's no concept of COVID today. So in a world with those concepts of COVID, that COVID that you're asking for stands out even as more inappropriate. That's purely selfish. You know, so I would think that we should worry less about the COVID and more about the relationship. Relationships are a greater vehicle of communication and hashpah than any kind of COVID that he would give you. Yeah.
So you just let it go, like a kid sitting in the Rebbe's seat.
Yeah. In my shir room, they bought me this year the most comfortable chair in the world. I was so comfortable, I bought another one for my house. Yeah. And I sit in it, and every day, or every once in a while, when somebody new comes, I make a speech, I say, I have to sit here, and not you guys sit here, because they paid for it for me, and they'd be insulted if I didn't sit here, because I'm uncomfortable sitting there. Today I walked in, somebody was sitting there, in the afternoon, or yesterday, I don't remember, and I had a conversation with him, and they go, what, I'm going to say, what, you're sitting? It doesn't mean anything by it. He never heard about the word COVID. But these guys, they'll do anything you ask them. There's nothing they won't do because they appreciate the relationship. I'll tell you a story. I have a guy who came from Eretz Yisrael, and his whole life he's been fighting about wearing a hat, during davening and Shabbos and this. And his parents didn't stop, and the yeshivas didn't stop, and he comes into my. So he can't wear a hat. Can't wear a hat. Finished. One day he comes into my office. He says someone's giving out $300 to buy new hats. So he asked me, he says, I was thinking, should I buy one? So I said, why not? Then he says, will I have to wear it? So I was a little bit surprised. I said, maybe on Shabbos. No, I can't. You hear? The thought of it, he wanted the money, but the thought of the hat was traumatizing. And then he says, for you, I'll do it. And I said, for me, nobody's doing anything. But for you, you know what that means? This was trauma par excellence in his life. There couldn't be more traumatic. And yet, for you, I'll do it. So, and that's not because I was makpid on my COVID, believe me. I don't know how to spell the word COVID. Yes?
The younger grade, someone has to teach them not to sit.
I'm sorry, what?
The younger grade, someone has to teach them not. You don't sit in Rebbe's seat and you stand up for Rebbe.
Okay, look, if someone has to do it, okay, I'm not saying no. If someone has to do it, it should come from the Menayel, not from the Rebbe. When you know, you know what he said, Reb Don Segel? He says, why they wear the, in the kapota, they have the slit up like that, you know? So when he was drunk on Purim, they say. So when they're standing here and they're bound for Moedim, they should be able to see who's finished and who's not, so they should know when they have to step back, you know what I mean? Like, come on, you know, the Rebbe, you know, what was it? Oh. This is a story, a beautiful story. I don't think it just touched the right nerves. There was a Rav who came back to Slabodka, learned in Slabodka many years ago, and he was a Rav someplace, South Africa, Europe, I don't know exactly where, and he came back to Slabodka for Shabbos. And they gave him an aliyah p'sachamishi, and he rose over to the altar after to say good Shabbos, and the altar sees a little bit he wasn't so happy with his aliyah. So he says to him, you, a miskabed bekloin chaveroi, you mon COVID? The guy didn't know what hit him. Miskabed bekloin chaveroi? What are you talking about? So that's why I brought it up, but the story is beautiful. What happened? 25 years ago, when he was a bocher in the yeshiva, Reuven Grozovsky, who was a Hiluyish bocher, came into the Beis Medrash on Shabbos. And he's standing in the back of the Beis Medrash, the altar was in front, and he starts taking off his jacket to put on tefillin. So the altar says, I sent you to stop him, you shouldn't be embarrassed. And you walk too slowly. You wanted the oilam to have a little hana. 25 years he waited before he told him that he has no right to mon COVID. Morning COVID is the right time, the right place. And anyway, if the Menayel says yes, I think that's good. The Menayel says everybody has to stand but it shouldn't be the thing. You shouldn't need it. The goal is to reach them, not. What? Oh, go ahead. 1, 2.
I just want to point out that the Chafetz Chaim's son, Rabbi Leib, wrote a sefer of the Anhagas of the Chafetz Chaim, and he writes in there that the Chafetz Chaim and his Rebbe never told him not to sit in his chair. It was never makbid.
That's right.
He was too much of an honor. He didn't have any shaykhs to his inyanim. That's what he writes.
And if it would have been a mitzvah's chinuch, the Chafetz Chaim would have been makbid. But the mitzvah's chinuch is kefi the situation and the matzav. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
There are countless classrooms where the Rebbe does not demand such respect, and the kids walk all over him. And there is no respect and no relationship.
Yeah. Yes. Well, why is there no relationship?
Because the only way you can have a relationship with the Rebbe is to have some sort of respect. He's not a friend. He's someone who you're looking up to, someone who you're interested in having a shaykhs with.
Okay. I could, maybe next in one of our sessions, we could give you equal time, and you could speak about that. I don't agree with you. Those Rebbeim that are not, they're walking all over them because they have no relationship with them either. Because they won't see what the Rebbe will do for me. Because they won't see how much the Rebbe cares for me. When they won't see the Rebbe call me up at night to make sure, he says, I saw you weren't paying attention when we learned this Tosfos. I just want to tell it over to you. I just want to talk to you about it. I just want to help you with it. Such a student is not going to misbehave. And by the first month, he could have that relationship with everyone. And if he has that relationship with everyone, who's the misbehavior? Yeah, once in a while there'll be some man going to walk all over him. They'll kill anyone who walks over him. They'll guard his COVID. They'll put the other guy to shame if he starts up with the Rebbe. This Rebbe, I think that I would love to see whether the classrooms that you're talking about are classrooms where not they have COVID and not they have relationship. If they have a relationship without COVID, I don't believe they'll be like that. Again, they won't be as perfect as the classroom, but it's not COVID. Well, that's what I wanted to say. COVID without the feeling is not COVID. I forgot, I meant to bring something else. COVID is not actions. COVID is hargosha. COVID is how you feel about it, how you appreciate it. It's not the actions. The actions are empty. Standing up, because I have to stand up, I don't even know if that's COVID at all. Maybe it is a little bit. You know something? One thing I will say, and you could argue this, and you could tell everybody out there, I don't know what I'm talking about, that B'toich Shelo Lishmo, Bo Lishmo, and Hergel Nasa Teva, I don't believe happens when you force someone to do something. Because Oines is Lav Keman de Ovidomi. He didn't do anything. You forced him. It's a different... I think the classrooms that you're describing are part of the Churban today, that we don't have that relationship, and therefore we don't get not the respect and not the attention and not the listening and not the willingness to hear and to imbibe and to follow and to... That's the way I see it. And I'm all this way, you have to be civil a little bit. Yeah. You might, there are disturbances this way. I'd rather have disturbances occasionally and have a class that's going to be mushpa that I could reach, rather than to have relative, if not perfect, and nothing's happening, or minimal things are happening. That's the way I see it. What can I tell you? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, yeah, go ahead. What?
What happens if you're teaching and you have one kid that he has like ADD, and every time everyone loves you, everyone's into it, and you get them schmack, great question, you give them prizes and raffle tickets, and everyone's into you, great, amazing. There's one kid, he has ADD, and he just can't stop moving and screaming and walking and shouting and making a disturbance every 20 seconds.
You know, the first thing they do is medication. He has medication. Well, look, that's something you have to take up with the principal, the menayel, with the school psychologist, or, you know, what can be done to help him on that level, which I think is very important and very doable. But you know something? Some of the ADD, that's the ADD that I mentioned before, this guy, that it doesn't have to disturb anybody. If he wants to, see, sometimes it's because he's not allowed to do the minimal that he starts doing more. If he can walk around, let him do our office. So what? That's it, you know? And he calls out occasionally. Try to balance it and explain to him, this is okay. Just don't disturb the rest of the class. And sometimes, look, they're extreme guys. They're going to be guys that are climbing on the ceiling, and everybody's going to be watching them climbing on the ceiling, you know? All right. So, but there are times where it's modest, where it's, you know, and sometimes with some medication. By the way, a lot of medication has to be adjusted. Medication is not just they take medication, they have to know exactly when to take it so it affects them the right time during the day. And oftentimes they can bring such situations under control. Okay, next week there's a therapist coming here, Dov Finkelstein, who is going to talk about a lot of very important issues that Mechanchim really should know. And the following week after Shavuos, we have Gershon Ribna is going to speak at 8 o'clock, and at 9 o'clock, his name is Rabbi David Ben Arush, who deals with a lot of the problems here. So he's partially going to share with us like some sense of where these problems are coming from and what we could maybe do to better understand them and better avoid, which is also a critical piece of chinuch today. Because anyone thinks that if today the problems are only 10%, which is not true, they're much more, by tomorrow they'll be 20, and the next week they'll be 30, and the next week it's getting more and more and more serious and more outside influences, and therefore these things are really very important.